From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. Today's episode was originally supposed to be a two-part series. Ryan Waterbury and I were going to talk about dealing with clients in the first part, and then we're going to talk about ads and specifically PPC or pay-per-click ads in the second part. And we were going to do a two-part series. Well, it came out so well that I sat down with Ryan today and asked Ryan if we could do a partnership where Ryan would come on the podcast once a month at least, and we talk about agency stuff, things that you can do as agency owners to help you out. So this is a little different than what I usually do, but I think it would be great for our listening audience. So Ryan and I, starting now, coming out of this is the first of two original parts talking about how to deal with clients. Well, it's now turned into a series. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation and many more that Ryan Waterbury and I are going to have. Sit back, relax, grab a coffee, and enjoy the podcast. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. Today I'm here with Ryan Waterbury, and we're going to do a little something different, which I haven't done on this podcast. We're going to do two parts. The first we're going to talk about is how to maintain customers. And then for a later date, we're going to record a little bit on ads and what ads are in this landscape. How are you today, Ryan?
I am doing well.
Yes, and it's been quite the week out here in WordPress land. There's lots going on, 5.9's out. You and I both have customers running around driving us sometimes crazy, sometimes good. What do you look for in your agency for a good customer?
That's a good question that until you run into some customers that you find out aren't a good fit, you really learn to appreciate the ones that are. So I have a handful of, I like all my customers, some more than others, but a good customer that fits well with my philosophy and my agency is someone that is looking for a partner to help advise on technology, help them grow their business, and work on their marketing and communications, whether it be a website, ad campaigns, or ongoing SEO. So really, for me, it's that partnership where there's mutual respect and understanding.
And I so like the way you use the word partner because too many times, and I'm sure you've been in, I've been in it, the customer thinks they have the right to dictate. Now, they do to a point because you're working for them. But when it becomes overbearing or boundaries get crossed, to me, that's not a partnership, right, Ryan?
Oh, not at all. Just to give you an example of something that happened on a client call, um, with a project that I was working on. This particular client asked for some advice, and had some other work that they do, and had asked for my opinions on a particular piece of software. And my experiences with it were not good, both from a security standpoint and a usability standpoint. And so ended the call. I said, I have some other recommendations. The following week with a follow-up call, again, they uh, asked the question, and I said, well, these things that you want to do are going to be manual and you can't do that. And my client's employee on the call, who was going to do some work on the project, said, "Hey, can't we just use this plugin?" And I had to step back and I said, "Nope, that doesn't do what you want to do." Really? It says, I said, do you know who wrote and co-developed that plugin? Oh, it was me. And it was at that point that I realized that the client didn't respect my expertise and didn't look to me for advice, and they were dictating, "We're going to use the solution and you're going to make it work." Well, I'm not going to make it work. I'm no longer working on that project with that client. Um, so I, when I talked about partnership earlier, it really is a two-way street where you have to understand your client's needs and fulfill those, but they also have to respect you as a resource. And when they stop doing that, then you need to take a look at, is this client really a good fit for me?
I so agree with that. I'll share another story. I had a number of years ago, I had a client who decided they wanted to implement a solution, and they went and installed their own plugin. And at the time, I was hosting the website, and the plugin they installed forced the too many calls, PHP calls. And the web host at the time decided to shut the site down based on erroneous PHP calls, as per the terms of service in the web hosting agreement. And this particular client was at a major conference in for government funding, and they called me in panic, said our site is down. I said, "That's nice." I said, "I can prove to the client that they caused their own problem, because with this particular client, I had logging turned on." And they said, "Yeah, we installed stuff." I said, "This is what you caused." And they said, "But we have a maintenance plan, fix it." And I turned to the client at the time and I said, "Have you seen the clause in your contract that says if you cause the problem, it's X dollars an hour at a 3 hour minimum?" And they kind of said, "But we're in the middle of conference." I said, "When you want to send me 50% of, the X dollars an hour, I'd be glad to take care of your problem." And they ended up sicking their paralegal on me, and I had my legal advice send them back a copy of the contract and say, "Here you go, and here's the proof. When you provide the X dollars an hour, your problem will get fixed." And that was the end of that. So clients seem to somehow think they're, shall we say, web developers.
With low code and no code solutions becoming
Yeah.
more popular and making it easier for marketers and just everyone in general to DIY solutions, we're and with younger generations, we used to call them the PlayStation generation when I was younger, that
Mhm.
they grew up with technology in their hand, so they understand some things more than other generations. Unfortunately, as you and I both know, not everyone's a developer. Not everyone has the expertise in maintaining a web presence. Um, you brought up contracts that I've learned progressively, uh, going through and running my own business, that you really want to have those clauses in your contract. And I'm constantly refining with things that you didn't ever think you would need to
Yeah.
do a CYA on. But yeah, um, I have that same clause, the 3 hour minimum, and correcting client issues, because you do see clients that go in, get happy, install some things, and then break their site because they think they know what they're doing. Uh, and, you know, it's it falls to us and our responsibility to fix it ultimately. But whether it's paid or not, that comes down to the contract.
So true. And what I'm hearing you say, and I would be the same to say, is do not do any web or business work without a contract in place.
I remember one of the first word camps that I had attended in the mid teens. Hearing, they would always have the developer track, the marketing track, and then kind of a business agency focused track at the Minneapolis WordCamp. And one of the years I spent just completely going through the business track to kind of learn and understand how some of the other agency owners tackled some problems. And one of the best ones was from a local agency guy who had started out as a solo dev, grew his agency to 12 people, and then got back down to himself and a couple of contractors, which was a great story. And that's ultimately where I'm shooting for. But, he said, get paid first, make sure you have a contract, get paid first. And he
Mm-hmm.
emphasized that you don't do any work until you have something signed and you get paid. Because a lot of people out in the world undervalue creative and development services hugely. That it's unfortunate, but like we were talking about the disaster stories, that clients don't really realize how easy they have it and what we actually do until they break something sometimes.
Yep. It's so true. I agree with the get paid first philosophy. I think the other thing we really got to talk about, and it's kind of a key for me, is that respect from a client. And by that I mean, many clients, they hire us as devs or as technology people, and then when you give them advice, they kind of look at you like, I'm not taking your advice. Now, I have no problem if a client wants to go get other advice. But if you're going to hire me and pay me and start paying me, shouldn't you have done your homework beforehand instead of afterward?
Oh, absolutely. If somebody hires me, either on a project basis or on a retainer basis for a long term project, whether it be marketing, development, or business consulting, if they're paying me and then they begin to uh, ignore advice and not respect boundaries, you know, that's another topic. But when they stop respecting your advice and expertise, and that affects results. If it's a collaborative process, which I like to take that approach, and particular SEO, if I'm not writing the content but providing briefs and advice, and the client refuses to write, well, you're not going to see results. And then that conversation becomes, do you want to add to your contract so I write your content for you? Well, no, but we still need to see results. So, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
It's true. And let's move on to the boundaries conversation because I happen to love this one, as you know. And boundaries are a multitude of things. Um, your hours of operation. We've all got clients who call us at 10 o'clock at night who aren't on um, 7 by 24 service contracts. We got the client who waits till midnight the night before he wants to change 20 e-commerce pictures, but they got to be done by 9 a.m. just because he forgot. And that's usually, from my experience, a scheduling or a bit of an issue with the client not being organized. And then we've all got the clients that say, I know in my business, I have a policy that says, if you have a problem with your website, go open up a help desk ticket. And that's actually written right into my contracts that says the kind of the way it's worded is the method for reporting um, problem issues is at the discretion of the developer and can change if need be at any time, but will be notified properly to clients. And I've got over the years, I've had a couple that ignore that. And then they come back to me and say, well, Rob, why didn't you service us? And I said, because the first couple of times I opened the ticket for you and reminded you to do it. Now I'm telling you, you got to do it. What do you think about boundaries issues in cases like that?
Oh, I've had clients try and ask for support all over the board, from sending a text on a Sunday morning
Mhm.
to providing photos and content via text. And I have to kindly remind them, please email these to support at onedog.solutions. Uh, that automatically logs everything into our support ticketing system, and we can assign it appropriately. I've got a form on my site. If they want to fill out a form and don't want to email, that sends to the same address and automatically uh, logs tickets by client. But no matter how many times you tell some clients, they just don't get it. And you're right. The first couple of times you remind them, hey, you need to open a ticket. Um, you have to be consistent. That's the other thing. And you have to set those clear boundaries. I think it's good communication, and it's it really comes down to, I hate to say it, training a client, but it really is training and educating your clients on what's appropriate and what's not. And the ones that get it and follow the policy and procedure, um, those are the ones that generally I find are more pleasant to work with. I think you're probably in the same boat.
Oh, there's no question because they actually get what you're trying to do for them. And then when they make a mistake and forget, they're really good. Like one the other thing I'm really stingent on with clients, even on care plans, is they'll call me up and then they'll leave me voicemail and say, Rob, why aren't you available? And one of the things I prefer to do is plan my days out. And one of the ways I plan my days out is I make it really easy for a client to go to my website and book time with me. And they all know how to book time with me. So, at the end of the day, um, it's up to them to book some time. And then it goes in both our calendars and we don't have a problem. I find for me personally, I want to give them my undivided attention. And I really do. So when a client gets you kind of on the phone and you're in the middle of something, I'm not always prepared. I don't always have the answers ready. I haven't even probably thought about what they're going to ask me. I'd rather go in that meeting prepared.
Oh, absolutely. The clients that I give a little leeway to when they have the oh shoot moments are the ones that do things by the book, get the request in early,
Mhm.
respect my time, and genuinely value what I do for them. And that that's really just it right there. Clients that understand that this is something that they either don't have the time for or can't do for themselves, and realize that you're in charge of this aspect. They value your expertise for whatever type of project that you're working on with them. Those are the clients that I like working for. The ones that start to say it should just take this.
Mhm.
Those are the start of red flags, when they start dictating to you how long something should take, or what you should use or how you should do it, in addition to not respecting those boundaries. Um, you learn those things over time. You can certainly listen to a podcast like we've got going on here, but until you really experience it, sometimes it doesn't sink in on who your good clients are, that you want to work with, and the clients that you really should, uh, say it. It's time to move on and work with somebody else.
Oh no, we've all been there. And, it's funny. We kind of talk about this, and you and I certainly have taken the approach in past that if a client, I really want them to go, I'll double or triple what I charge them. And lately, I've even gone so far as I just use one word, no. And they'll say, why not? And I honestly will say, truthfully, I don't want to. Because at that point, I don't think it's worth getting into it. You've probably already told the client your concerns. They probably haven't listened to you. They're probably not going to listen to you. So, when as a dev or somebody in business for yourself, then why do you even want to entertain it anymore? And I just think it's better off to say no and say why. And you just I don't even qualify anymore, because if you qualify it, you leave the door open. And I don't want that door open at that point.
Not at all. And when you're starting out, I think I think we say yes to a lot of projects that we normally wouldn't now. And part of that is the experience I had referenced earlier, but part of it is, can you afford to say no? And we're always going to have that project that comes along that you don't say no to, that you probably should have. It happens, but learn from that mistake and then don't do it again. Um, so it, I'm learning to take the Rob rate, as our water cooler is now calling it, and applying that to projects that I might say no to, especially if it's a current client. I will price it accordingly, uh, in and it's kind of the pain in the ass rate. Well, this is going to take me more time because, one, it's going to be frustrating, and two, it's just going to take more time. Period, because of, either the client's going to want to help, or dictate solutions that maybe aren't the best, or just take longer to implement.
It's true. Now, let's move on to something that there's different philosophies on. I f- and that's giving clients access to your project management system. And I know different devs have different philosophies. I know in my case, I don't bother. And one of the reasons I don't bother is, truthfully, my clients tend not to go there. So it's easier to send a weekly summary in an email and send it out. How do you handle that, and what you prefer to do?
It's interesting that you touched on that. I have a different philosophy on that, in the fact that when I'm working on a web project in particular, I do give clients access to that, and I show them a waterfall Gantt chart, and I assign them tasks. So if they are due to provide content, photos, their logos, their branding,
Mhm.
or if they are allotted a few days for a review process and they take 3 weeks, they actually see that all the dates get reassigned. I really put this policy in place with a client nonprofit board that said, "Why isn't this done? Why isn't this done? It took you 2 months to provide me photos and copy. Now you see that it took this person that you assigned this task to not me, 2 months to provide this content. I can't do anything until you provide, whatever. Content's usually the one that's the holdup in a lot of projects, but I mean, it could be anything. And so I've given them a small glimpse into the project management, but only from the extent that I make them responsible for certain tasks. And when they don't fulfill that responsibility, then they can see that they held up their own project. So that's the part of the collaboration that I work through. There are times when I'm late and they can see it. So but as far as the whole project management, it's pretty limited. They only see a very few tasks, and usually it's only project specific when we're doing a web build. Just so we have that understanding of who's responsible for what, and they get reminders from the project management software that, hey, this is overdue. I it's nudged some clients to provide it and been helpful for the most part. I haven't. I've only had one client come back with negative feedback on I'm getting too many reminders. Well, maybe you should close those tasks and give me your content.
Yeah. Yeah. I just find for my clients over the years, it's easier to put those reminders in an email. And I just, I, I know it's a different philosophy, but I just find with the people I work with, it's probably easier to do that. But I mean, you got to do it one way or the other. So I just kind of chalk it up to that. If you had something to say to a new client for you, what would be the thing you would say to that new client so they could be the best client they could be? What would your suggestion be?
Honestly, it's not necessarily one thing to tell a new client. The I think a lot of times we as web developers, designers, digital agencies don't have a good onboarding or offboarding process.
Yeah.
And part of what I'm redesigning and rebuilding is a client expectation packet. And it right now it's just an email that I've got canned with here's how to log into your site. Here are links to a couple of videos on how to use our project management and feedback tools. I'm looking at expanding that to give them, here are ways that you can communicate with me. No, text is not one that I accept. Giving them, laying out the boundaries very specifically, that our hours of operation are 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, Central Standard Time. Here are the support addresses, and taking that a step further, building a membership area on my website for anyone that has an ongoing project or web care to provide them with some educational resources. So it's not just that one thing that I would say to a client, but it's that continual education and guiding them on how to be a good client. Because some clients just don't know. You may be the first agency that they've ever worked with. Honestly, I would prefer that, because there are a lot of people out there that have been burned by bad agencies. So we can only be so lucky, though.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think the client information package, or if you want to call it your client onboarding sequence, or if you want to use the terminology client cheat sheets, I actually like to give clients a series of checklists. And that basically, it's the same idea. It tells them what to expect, how to expect it, where to expect it. And then you don't get into this, oh, I didn't know. And you don't get into this, I'm not sure kind of deal. And that's really a big deal, because I think one of our jobs as running an agency is to guide the client through the process. This is our business. This isn't the client's business. And many small businesses don't have any concept of project management or how that falls or how processes fall, to be frank.
Yeah, I think as technology focused businesses, that we have a little bit of a leg up understanding, and researching different project management tools. I mean, how many have you looked at in the past year or two? Half
Probably,
a dozen.
probably 10. Yeah.
And see, how many do you think a client's looked at? Zero,
Mhm.
one,
Yeah.
or you know. So when we bring these tools to them and these processes, they can be really foreign. And I'm learning to take a step back and look at some things from a client perspective on they don't live in this world of constant changing technology. That's why in a lot of cases, that's why they hired us,
It,
is to either translate or help them make sense of it and, be their liaison. So being the concierge to your processes and just the digital world in general is really a role that I think the good agencies fulfill well.
I would agree, and I'm going to make a little bit of a joke about project management tools. The one they've probably looked at is the one that all of us dread, and myself being a project management certified, is Microsoft Project, because it's included with their copy of Office, and they just say, "Oh, I've got it, so let's use this." And my answer is no. That is the one tool after years I will not go anywhere near, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, I spent my days in the corporate world using Microsoft Project, and I don't ever want to go back.
Yeah, we in my days in healthcare, we had a CTO who insisted that Microsoft Project be laid out the way he wanted it, not the way um, Project was designed to function. So the biggest joke in our organization back then was we spent Monday afternoons, every project lead you could find in his office trying to get his projects ready because they were due to be submitted by 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning, and that they weren't submitted exactly the way he wanted them. And believe me, the way he wanted them was more a reporting structure, not using project the way it was supposed to be reported. So what you end up doing was keeping two copies of your project, one to submit to the CTO and one that really reflected what you were trying to use project for, believe it or not. So been there,
I
done
you,
that.
yeah, I mean, when we talk about project management tools, I know you and I both use ClickUp,
Yeah, we do.
and I think another popular one, and it's more database driven, is Airtable. But
Yes.
the real nice flexibility about the newer project management tools is you can display the same data in multiple different views and keep the same project.
Yep.
So I have clients that really that are savvy, and maybe they've used Trello. So when I invite them to my ClickUp board, I only give them the Kanban view because
Yep.
that's what they're familiar with, and maybe the calendar because they need to see some dates. But different people absorb information in different ways, and even if we had 5 or 10 of our ideal clients, they're all going to have their own idiosyncrasies and absorb information in different ways. So my goal is to get, you know 5, 10, 15 clients in my ideal client set and keep them happy, because if you have a diverse client set that, the good, the bad, the ugly, clients makes things difficult on you, and more so than it needs to be.
Yep. And I think the last topic I really want to touch on, but in this realm of managing clients, but probably should have been the first one, is communication. And I really think where agencies have issues is when the communication goes south. And by that, I mean it's non existent or it doesn't happen the way it should happen. And the client doesn't stop and hit reset and say, let's have a conversation. The agency owner doesn't stop and hit reset and say, let's have a conversation around the communication problems. And it just gets worse and worse and worse.
I Yeah, and not even communication, but one thing, just in especially web projects, is you talk about communication. One thing that we didn't bring up was scope creep.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And I think that feeds right into proper communication with clients,
Mhm.
and the fact that you want to. And I had seen a recent tweet from Beth Livingston that reminded me that you estimate the project in the discovery portion, and then when you start the project, you take a look at it again. And as you go through the project, at each milestone, you re-estimate. And are we still on track? Because some clients have some expectations and they may not be the same as yours, especially if you're not communicating. And that a lot of times can lead to, the inevitable scope creep where you're doing a lot of things to meet their expectations that weren't necessarily in the original contract. And that's just, in my opinion, a failure of communicating properly. For me, I like to do the Friday email on here's what happened, here's what didn't, and here's why. And if I need something from that client, or it's just a touch point that I haven't heard from you all week, you were supposed to do X, or can I help you review your pages? And yeah, just communicating. It's the easiest thing to do, but oftentimes it's one of the most difficult.
Yeah, it's so true. And I really think part of that is people are afraid or concerned to bring up issues. And I would rather the issues come up front, personally, instead of on the back end. And you sort of touched on scope creep for a minute. And where I think scope creep becomes a bit of an issue is clients are trying to get stuff done for as little as they can. And I'm sure you have, I have. I've sat there with a client and said, you asked for ABC to be in the contract. If you want to put D in, that changes the deliverables for the contract. It changes the date, it changes the cost, it changes a lot of things. And they look at me, but it's the same project. And I said, no, this isn't what we agreed on. And it comes back to that. This is why I don't like doing projects personally without contracts.
Yeah. And, part of that communication project, if we want to talk about web projects especially, um, clients have budgets. They want to maximize it and get the most bang for their buck. That's if they have some particular needs, that's one why they reached out to us, because they either can't accomplish it themselves or don't have the time. So when their expectations are different or they want to change an aspect of it, one of the things that I'm still working on and finding a good process for is a good change order process. And that's one of the ways that I know other agencies and myself use in rounds of revisions, or in particular when we talk about scope creep and really communicating that Okay, Mr. Client, we did this. You weren't happy with it. You want, we did X, you want Y. That's going to cost X amount of dollars to accomplish that. And that change order process has to be part of your client communication process. And that's as much of a contractual CYA as it is the part of communicating.
Mhm.
So, uh, what are your thoughts on the change order process? I know you have a pretty thorough process in place.
Yeah, I do. I actually, right now, the way I do changes is I have a change management form, which every client gets a copy of. And they have to fill out a form and submit it. And then I look at the form and say, okay, does this change the scope or not? Sometimes it's something minor. And depending on what it is, I'll look at it and say, okay, this will be a 5-minute thing. Let's do it. But sometimes I've got one on my desk right now that the client submitted major changes. And to the point, it adds a third to the cost of the project. And I costed it out and I sent it back and I said, please sign this form off approving or disapproving. Because the other thing that my contracts all say is all changes must be made in writing. And I do that on purpose. So, and it's not to be a stickler, it's to keep control of the flow. I just know from having managed multi-million dollar projects in healthcare that if you keep changes flowing on a proper form, on a proper process, then changes are easy to manage. And then uh, there's no surprise when the project, instead of taking a month, takes 2 or 2.5 at that point.
Yeah, well documented changes. And I mean, those are things that I have in both my web care terms and conditions that when you submit your request, if it's going to take more than your allotted hours, if you choose to purchase an hour block from us, or if it's out of the scope of current project, we'll re-estimate it. And, you talked about that 5-minute change. Well, I have had some clients in the past that they'll have a 5-minute change every month, and it doesn't seem like a big deal the first time, but then it's continual. And if you add those up over time, they it becomes a large amount of work. And, so keeping track of what you're doing and logging things, and even for me, even if it's a 5-minute change, I create a task, even if they haven't submitted a formal request, and keep track of that just so I know and I can take a look back at the end of the month, quarter, or the year and see where I'm spending my time. So I can refine again and get better at communicating with clients that this is okay or this is not. I mean, we all want to remain profitable and um, have our own free time at the end of the day.
Free time? Did I hear you say that?
I know. What is that?
That
I
that doesn't quite exist in our world, I don't think.
it doesn't. And you know when we touched on good clients, bad clients, and how you want to have just good clients, it's not always possible. I mean, I look at 2020 when I had travel agencies, restaurants, bars as a large portion of my book of business,
Mhm.
which as we all know, kind of went away during that time frame. So, you can't always say goodbye to some of the bad clients if they're paying the bills.
That is true.
Uh,
The last couple of years has been really tough for many of us, right? So,
I and I think as we progress, and 2021 was definitely a better year, and we look into 2022 where people are looking to start new projects and do more things again, and there's a little more confidence. Yeah, I'm personally booked out through May, and I'm happy about that right now. I can actually confidently say no to some projects, and I hate to do it, but if the project isn't right or the client doesn't want to fit in your schedule or can't because they have their own deadlines, that's okay, and it's okay to say no. But it takes a while to get to that point, to be financially comfortable enough to do that again.
No, it sure does. And I think, that's always the challenges of having a new agency versus an agency that's got lots of work is, what do you keep and what don't you keep? And honestly, I think there's, agencies that are better fit for other people. Not one agency size fits all, not one way of doing things fits all. I think it's a really heavy discussion, right?
Yeah, I we hear constantly, and I'm sure our clients don't, but I'm constantly hammered with the statement, niche down, find your niche. And I think more than that, it's finding your ideal client, and they don't necessarily have to be in your specific niche, but if they have the same needs as your ideal client, you're more than likely going to be able to work with them and be happy. And your client's going to be happy if you're happy doing your work. So that's the other take, that as a small independent agency, I certainly have a style that I like to work with. And for some people, it works great and we work well together. Uh, and for some other people, it might not. But there's probably another agency out there that they might be a good fit for.
Yeah, that's so true. Do you have any parting thoughts, Ryan, on anything we haven't touched with on that you want to add for managing clients?
No, I actually think I just touched on it, that there's a lot of good agencies out there.
Yeah.
And if a client doesn't fit for you, they might be a good fit for someone else. I've been trying to make some strategic relationships with some other local agencies that have different niches and service different clients, and uh, feel comfortable if I have a project come in, recommending a different agency if they don't seem like they're going to be a good fit. And I've gotten some recommendations that way too.
Yeah.
So that I guess that would be my parting shot, would be, not everyone's your client. Um,
That is, so key, those words. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, Ryan, what's the best way?
you can find me on nearly every social media network at One Dog Solutions. You can email me at ryan.waterbury at onedog.solutions, or check out my website at onedog.solutions.
Thanks, Ryan, and I'll be looking forward to doing part two when we get into talking about online advertising. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye bye.
A very special thank you to Ryan Waterbury for joining me on today's podcast to talk more about how to deal with clients. I hope this helps you in your agency and helps you in some ways deal with some of those clients that can be easy or tough to deal with. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the SDM Show. The SDM Show is brought to you by Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing. For more information about Rob Cairns and Stunning Digital Marketing, go to stunningdigitalmarketing.info. From here, you can connect to us on social media, go to our website, and even go to the podcast to subscribe. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. Make your business succeed.